Welcome back to The Price of Business. I am your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. As all of you heard last week, another shooting, as Barack Obama talked about it. Another shooting, another horrible incident. This time in Oregon, where someone was attracted like a moth to light to a gun-free zone. And there's this huge debate. The progressives are arguing, oh no, Oregon allows a concealed weapon to be allowed anywhere if they've met the concealed weapon requirements. As if this guy's a legal scholar. He's sitting there watching the news and seeing where mass murderers go, and then he looks and it says there's signs, and even the website says it's a gun-free zone, except, a bunch of legalese and legal jargon that's not going to impress most. It's just incredible, and then Barack Obama gets up there and says, here I am again. We're all numb is the word. We're all desensitized. And the reality is that I'm shocked that we continue to do the exact same thing, expecting different results. We continue to maintain the toughest gun restriction laws in the country at places like universities. And then madmen go there to kill people because of that exact reason. We see manifestos like the guy who did a mass shooting in a California college, and he said in the manifesto, I chose this place because it is a gun-free zone. So at some point we either need to regulate these gun-free zones out of existence by requiring X number of law enforcement for X number of students in order to make sure they're protected to the hilt. That there's in every single access, metal detectors in every one of those buildings, going in and out. They need to protect them because right now it's an invitation. These people have mental health issues. This guy, in fact, may be a Muslim. We don't know. He asked specifically about Christians. This could actually be another act of terror. And Barack Obama being all up in arms could be part of him being, his war of distraction that he loves to do on that possibility. We don't know. All we know is that lectures aren't working like he's doing. Gun-free zones aren't working. We've had over 40 incidences on school campuses since Sandy Hook. Over 40 incidents since Sandy Hook. It doesn't work. And thinking more gun laws will work. And he had the gall to say that the cities and states with the toughest gun laws have the lowest crime. I thought he was from Chicago. He claims to be a senator from Chicago area. Chicago has 10 times the crime of Houston, even though we have comparable size populations. Chicago is one of the only places I've ever been in where I felt uncomfortable constantly uncomfortable. And it was because of who has a gun, who doesn't, our cops. It's just, and I felt similar actually in Washington, D.C., except there's a lot more cops per capita in Washington, D.C. than there is in Chicago. And so the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. More gun laws. There's no proof that more gun laws will make a difference. There is substantial evidence that making a scary environment for potential killers, again, they got mental health issues, not intelligence issues. Making a scary environment for these murderers might make a difference. What's the proof? Look at where all of these mass murderers are taking place. They're taking place at gun-free zones. Prohibit those gun-free zones. Make them illegal. Or require for every 10 students, one law enforcement officer. Some measure of protection to make sure that it can be enforced. That's my thought. What do you think, Sigmund Kramer?
Well, first of all, I think it's awful that we keep having these mass shootings, and I think that it speaks to something about our society because these types of things don't necessarily happen as much in other countries, whether they have strict gun laws, whether they have bans, whether they have just totally, off the charts open carry. We do tend to have a lot of these mass shootings here where other countries don't. And instead of focusing on, our Second Amendment, I think we need to focus on things like mental health and cultural issues that are causing this. And This guy clearly he didn't choose the school because it was a gun-free zone. He chose the school because he had a beef with the teacher there, with other people there, and
how do you know that?
He said, well, witness accounts. He said before he shot the teacher, the first person that he shot, he said, "I've been waiting to do this for years," and shot the teacher, and then went around asking if the students were Christians, and if they were Christians, he shot them in the head, and if they weren't, then he shot them in the legs. Well, clearly he had a bone to pick with Christians for some reason, and just speculation at this point, and we'll keep hearing speculation for weeks. But at this point, they said that there was a MySpace page, which who has a MySpace page? The guy's 26 years old, MySpace page, but whatever.
He's an old soul.
He had a MySpace page, and he had like 2 friends on it, one of which, and when you look at the pictures that he had posted, he's a radical Islamist. Mm-hmm. So there's a question of whether this guy's a Muslim. That kind of stuff's going to come out more. Hopefully, we'll find out more information. Of course, people on the left are trying to make him a conservative Republican. And he had all these pictures of the Irish Republican Army on his page. So I said, okay, sure, he's a Republican. As in the Irish Republican Army,
I just want, just for clarity's sake, for the listener, though, you're not saying that gun-free zones don't matter, that they don't play a role.
Of course,
I can show you documentation.
Of course they play a role. Of course they play a role. I'm saying in this instance, I don't even think that it was a matter of he was choosing a gun-free zone. I think that only acted as a non-deterrent.
If it wasn't a gun-free zone, that would have been a deterrent that
what
would have either delayed or made him never do it.
Sure, absolutely.
Maybe instead he would have isolated and killed those various individuals in a serial way. And maybe would have gotten caught.
Or maybe he just wouldn't have
done it at all.
Right.
I believe that there's an incentive for sick people when it's a gun-free zone.
They're magnets.
They're literally a magnet like moths to light.
Sure. I'm just saying I don't think he picked this place like the Colorado shooter picked the Aurora movie theater because it is a gun-free zone. He chose it specifically because it's a gun-free zone. And many of the times that these mass shootings occur, I'm talking about indiscriminate shooting, okay, mass shootings, not workplace violence where they go to somewhere where they have a beef with the people there specifically, right? I'm not talking about the Fort Hood shooting, which, by the way, he included that in his speech. Come on, Obama. That was a terrorist act.
Yeah.
That was...
For whatever motivation, that was an act of terror.
And he won't ever admit that.
No.
But these indiscriminate kind of mass shootings are occurring at gun-free zones because, let's face it, they don't have to worry about whether they're going to get taken out before they accomplish their objective.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, I would like to bring out the hero, Chris Mintz, who is an Army veteran who got shot 7 times rushing this guy, trying to stop him. And he was bleeding out on the floor saying, it's my kid's birthday today. It's my kid's birthday today. He kept repeating it over and over. He didn't want to die. He didn't have a death wish. He was trying to stop the violence from spreading, and he's a hero. And I wish that I really hope that more people will learn that name, Chris Mintz.
Not the other Chris, the guy who was wielding the gun, killing people.
No, Chris
Mintz. The guy who
Mintz
took out the guy who was killing people.
Well, he didn't take him out, but he tried to.
He tried to, yeah.
And that's a big deal. I mean, that's a huge deal. People in the face of this act to try to stop it rather than just play the victim. And I hope that that's a message that can get across. But it was horrible. It was horrifying. I am saddened and depressed, quite frankly, by our society that is allowing this to keep happening, that is encouraging this to keep happening. And I think because of the media attention to the sickos, that doesn't act as a deterrent. That acts as a catalyst.
Yeah.
They want to be martyrs. They want to live these long lives. They think they're going to be, forevermore in the minds of the American people.
And I can't remember any of their names, actually.
Right, but we need to stop remembering. We need to stop remembering their names. I can't remember
any of their names. I can remember how goofy a lot of them looked, and I don't mean that in necessarily the way they looked, but that weird, obviously mental illness kind of look here. And I have a certain amount of compassion for for these people. They needed help, and they didn't get it. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that governments and institutions were focusing on the guns and not on the mental illness.
Clearly.
And if they focused on the mental illness, we might not have a lot of this going on. And we know from the great work that we've been doing with Frank Granite, that there's a lot of over-medication going on, pills,
psychosis,
pills being prescribed for depression that leads to people committing suicide. Well, a lot of people who decide to commit suicide often decide to go ahead and take people with them. They don't want to go alone.
That's right.
I mean, this is a very, very sad situation, and we need to focus on the cause, not on the symptoms, and we need to stop creating environments in which it's natural for this to happen.
It's just a political football, and nothing's going to get changed. Look, I posted, somebody at Vox came up with, because Obama said, I want you to compare the amount of deaths due to gun violence in America to the amount of deaths of Americans due to terrorism over the last decade. And so Vox came up with this graphic. And of course, it showed like 300 over the last decade, like 360 or so thousand Americans died by gun violence versus 300 died by terrorism. Of course, they're not including the military that's fighting the terrorists overseas. But then I said, okay, let's use that logic. How about all the deaths by heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's,
mental illness,
all these things that we could be focusing, because he's saying we've spent trillions of dollars on war. Why don't we, spend the money on or come up with gun control and this and that, or do studies and this and that? No. Why don't we put that money towards curing diseases? That's going to save, in 1 year alone, millions of lives in 1 year alone. Yep. And so let's get real about it. If we want to really fix things here in America, guns are actually a very small portion. By the way, Kevin, real quick, last thing. The FBI came out with their crime statistics, almost at all-time lows for violent crime, especially murder. So, yes, you hear about this kind of stuff in the news, but you got to keep it in perspective. We're actually a far safer country than we have been in a really long time, and that is worth noting.
Absolutely. Do you want to mention today's program brought to you in part by our friends at NetSync Network Solutions? Do you also want to remind you, best content here shows up over there at usatoreview.com. While there, like it on Facebook, follow it on Twitter. Pray for those families. Pray for those that are lost. Pray that our government actually deals with this problem and quits focusing on the symptoms. Have a great day. Spend it right here.